Now, just before we talk to Dan Hodges, let's have a look at this, because apparently it was date night over in Rio de Janeiro, and Justin Trudeau and Sir Keir Starmer decided it would be very nice for them to get together in their casual gear to sit down. Casual gear, Keir, that could be. Sitting down, he's got some Hugo Boss sneakers on. They're both having a glass of what looks like craft beer. They look as if they've joined that mob led by donkeys, don't they? You know, that crowd that put up all the sort of anti-Tory stuff. Very, very strange. And Keir Starmer, of course, who now gallivants around the world, getting absolutely nowhere, came back from the G20, didn't get what he wanted from China, didn't get what he wanted from Russia, and he's going to miss Prime Minister's questions. So, great start to the week, mate. Let's talk to Dan Hodges. How you doing, Dan?
Good. Just enjoying those unbelievable images again and trying to work out what Keir Starmer and his communications team think they're doing.
Yeah, what is he doing? I mean, are they trying to make him look like your everyday guy? Because he doesn't look like your everyday guy. He looks like, as I say, looks like he's joined led by donkeys in some kind of, you know, hackney hostelry where they're selling craft ale in glasses slightly short of a pint.
Well, I don't know if they think your average guy spends his time swanning around in Rio de Janeiro having a glass of bubbly or beer or
in Hugo Boss sneakers.
It's Hugo Boss sneakers, whilst the snow's coming down here and the farmers are up in arms in the street,
right.
And finding pensioners are going to be freezing in their homes this winter, and Vladimir Putin's about to start World War III.
Yeah.
I mean, joking aside, I mean, we've covered this in the Daily Mail this morning. My colleague Jason Groves has written about how there are now concerns within Downing Street about the way this impression of Starmer, the jet setter, is starting to land with focus groups.
Right.
Of course it's going to land with focus groups because it's what he's doing. This isn't some... And I remember I was told about this weeks ago by a member of the cabinet saying then they would... And wrote about it at the time that they were becoming concerned not just about the optics, but literally about the amount of time Keir Starmer spent out of the country.
Right.
And I just cannot, again, understand why he and his team don't do something about this. I mean, we're told his team do understand that, that are concerned about it, but they keep doing the same thing, and it looks absolutely terrible. Why are they doing this?
Yeah, I know.
No idea.
I mean, he made perhaps an insight into his own mind the other day when somebody asked, I think this was on his way to Rio, and he said, it doesn't matter where I am, it matters what I'm doing. Well, actually, it does matter where you are, because they also put out that ridiculous set of pictures of him sitting on what looked like a private jet. I don't know if it was. I know it was on government business and all that. But he's sitting there again in his sort of casual gear, his Hugo Boss shoes, looking intently into a document, reading it as if to show I'm working hard on the plane, and here's an accidental picture that somebody's just accidentally taken of me working hard on a plane. And you just think, why? And it does matter where he is, because right now, when there's a crisis in Britain in terms of the economy, there's some pretty bad weather going on. There's a sort of imminent, outbreak of further hostilities in Europe, by the way, not very far away from Britain. People want to know what he's going to be doing about it, and they want to see him in Downing Street. They don't want to see him on a plane. They don't want to see him in a bar in Rio de Janeiro, I'm afraid.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely right. Look, obviously, foreign diplomacy and statesmanship is an important part of the job of Prime Minister.
Yeah.
Everybody accepts that. But you have to get the balance right. And you have to demonstrate, especially if you're a new Prime Minister, that you understand the concerns and the needs of your own people. And frankly, an MP said to me, I think it was last week before, said, does Keir Starmer actually want to be Prime Minister?
Yeah.
I cannot remember a new Prime Minister who has felt less present and has imposed themselves less on their own government, their own government agenda and the country as a whole. We've had the budget, which is basically the property of Rachel Reeves.
Well, it will be now that everybody hates it, right?
Well. Yeah.
Now, last time, I'm going to pick you up on this, actually, because last time you and I spoke about this, you were telling me how well the budget had gone down, but you were talking about Westminster, you were talking about Labour MPs, you were talking about inside the Cabinet. I would imagine there might be some Labour MPs now who are reconsidering that view.
No, we're still... No, Labour MPs are still broadly pleased with how the budget has landed.
How can they be, though? I mean, you've got business now saying it's going to cost jobs and it's going to put prices up. You know, all big business. I'm not talking about just some rogue, you know, kind of, you know, non-Labour supporting businesses, but, you know, Marks and Spencer's, Tesco's, the big supermarkets. You've even got Andrew Bailey, the Bank of England boss, saying that they're right to say that this is a bad budget.
Yeah, but again, as we talked about, remember what the context of the budget was. The budget was, is it going to directly hit working people? You just put your finger on it. We've got the big supermarkets, the big retailers running around yesterday saying, oh, my God, we're going to have to lay off workers. We're going to have to lay off workers. As I pointed out yesterday, just look at how much profit these companies are making at the moment. Now, Labour is prepared and the government are prepared to have a fight with businessmen whose businesses last year made billions of pounds of profit. They're prepared.
Well, then they're going to have to be prepared to subsidise the unemployed as the unemployment rate goes up, and we have to pay more public tax money to support people on benefits. That's going to be the result, isn't it?
The companies on that list have been making very healthy profits.
It's not against the law, Dan.
No, absolutely, it's not against the law, and good luck to them. But if they want to make profits, as you've said, make these huge profits off the British people at a time when the British people are struggling to pay the bills, then they're going to have to wind their necks in a little bit.
Yeah, but how is making people unemployed? But how is making people unemployed?
And saying to these people, hang on a second.
No, but Dan,
the priority is not going to be your shareholders' profits. It's going to be the British people.
Yeah, but
these guys were making profit are making profits now, and they were making tidy profits at the time when the cost of living was going through the roof.
But hang on, Dan, you're going to let me speak, Dan, for a second, right? The point is that these companies are very successful companies because they're very good at what they do, in stark contrast to the Labour government, who are not very good at what they do. And at the end of the day, they will continue to make profits. But how can you explain helping working people by making them unemployed? Because that's what's happening, and that's what's going to happen.
You've got a company that made...
You're not answering the question.
No, I'm answering the question. You've got a company that made £2 billion of profits, a small increase in national insurance. They need to pay it. They need to pay.
It's not a small increase.
Their shareholders will continue to make.
Yes, but Dan. But think about the big picture. But hang on, Dan. Think about the big picture here. I accept all of that. And the government will waste that money as it wastes all other monies that it brings into the National Exchequer and claim that they're saving the NHS. But if you're, as a result of punishing these companies who make an awful lot of wealth for this country and who create an awful lot of tax already for the government, if the byproduct of that is making more people unemployed, how is that helping people?
It's not about punishing them.
You can't answer it, can you?
I'm literally answering you. It's not about punishing them. Nobody's saying they should. Nobody's saying let's nationalise them.
No, but you're saying they don't pay enough tax.
Let's not allow them to make profits. They can continue to make profits. All the government is doing is saying, look, we've been through hard times. Everybody knows we've been through hard times. It's rubbish we've been through hard times.
They're not saying it because of that. They're doing it because they've made decisions to pay public sector workers over the odds, which they claim they have to do in order to make that better. And now they're sacking people from private work because they don't like the big companies making too much money.
They're not sacking people.
Well, they are effectively.
They've had an increase in employers' national insurance contributions.
And jobs are going to be lost, right? You've admitted that.
Billions of pounds a year are being asked to pay a little bit more. And if those companies...
Millions more.
Sorry?
Millions more.
Fine, but they're making billions of pounds of profit.
But they work for a living. They work for a living. Nobody in government makes any money for the government or the country because they're all in the public sector.
But
you work in the private sector, Dan. You provide tax money to this government, right? Nobody in government creates wealth for anybody, do they? Because it's not their money.
But Mike, everybody works for a living. The people who are the shareholders in these companies and the people who are the executives of these companies have been making profit at a time when the rest of the country has been struggling.
That's not true.
The government is saying, what do you mean it's not true?
It's not true. The rest of the country
the shareholders of these companies haven't been getting share dividends.
No, of course they have. But that's the system. Yeah, but hang on, Dan.
Have not been getting huge salaries.
No, you're saying
the rest of the country was struggling at cost of living.
you're saying the rest of the country's struggling.
Yes.
The country's been struggling because of the cost of living, because of the fact that various governments, and I include the Tories in this, completely and utterly mishandled our energy policy for decades, right? It's got nothing to do with capitalism. If you want to do away with capitalism, why don't they just come out and say so? But, you know, people want to make money. People in the private sector generate money for the government. It's all they do. People in government spend money that's generated by the private sector. That's all they do. And in the middle, somebody has to make an agreement where everybody's happy. And at the moment, I think it's very clear that the Labour government is going after people who make money privately because they don't like them. It's that simple.
Mike, Mike, you know, everyone in this country, the ordinary working people of this country, have been through hell pretty much the last 3 or 4 years. First they had COVID, then they had the cost of living crisis. And when they were going through that, they had politicians telling them, and they had business leaders telling them, they understood it was hard, but it was something they just had to put up with until we got through the other side. It was just the way things had to be. Fine.
Well, I never agreed with any of that either, by the way. I never agreed with any of that.
But, Mike, why is it all right to say that to the ordinary hard-working people of this country and tell them they've got to suck it up, and then suddenly, when someone turns around and says, actually, do you know what? The shareholders in these companies who are making billions and the chief executive of these companies on their triple, quadruple figure salary, how many millions they're earning, they're just going to have to pay a little bit more as well.
But it's not just a little bit more.
Up in arms and start screaming about the end of capitalism.
No, it's not. No, but you're missing my point altogether. You're deliberately failing to answer the question. You haven't yet said how it's good for the country, how it's good for working people to get fired. Now, you might say there's a good reason. They are. The jobs are going. The Bank of England said it. Tesco's have said it. Marks and Spencer's have said it. They're all saying it. They're losing jobs.
Why are they saying it, Mike?
Because their costs have gone up.
Of these companies still want to be able to rake in their massive salaries, and the shareholders in these companies still want to be able to rake in their dividends.
And they will.
Now, if they're going to do that on the back of sacking,
so what's the point then? So what's the point?
If they want to do that.
All right, well, let me ask you another question then. Since you're incapable of answering that one on an ideological basis, right? How about this? How about this? Has Rachel Reeves, the congenital and compulsive liar, managed to work out what the cost will be of firing a load of people onto the scrap heap of unemployment as it continues to rise? How much will that cost compared to the amount of extra national insurance they get from the companies they're going after? Is that going to be a benefit? Because almost every other tax they're putting on is not going to end up making much money for them at all.
Well, it depends, doesn't it? I mean, it depends on on the extent. It depends on the greed of these companies.
Well, no, it depends on how many people lose their jobs.
It does, yeah. But the number of people who are going to lose their jobs.
That's not on the companies.
Are going to lose their. Mike, are you saying these people are going to be laid off because a company like Sainsbury's is about to go bust?
No, not saying that at all. But what I'm saying is that the government... Hang on, well, let me answer the question. Let me answer the question. Let me answer the question.
Lay these people off?
Well, because the Labour government has created a situation that they didn't need to create in order to make zero money whatsoever, because they haven't looked at the big picture, and that seems to be their problem about everything. They're not going to make any money out of taking the winter fuel allowance away. They're going to make hardly any money from the farmers. They're going to make hardly any money from the VAT added to private schools. So why are they doing it? They're doing it out of ideological nastiness and envy, and they're getting nothing out of it, and that's very clear. And you know that. You just have to keep defending it.
I don't have to keep defending it at all. I'm defending it for the reason I said. I've defended it for the reason...
Well, nobody outside of the Labour Party headquarters agrees with you.
You've just yourself said that some company like Sainsbury's is not facing going... But if Sainsbury's start laying off staff and sacking people, that is because they want to continue to maximise their profits so that very wealthy chief executives who run these companies can continue to be very...
You sound like somebody from North Korea, Dan. You sound like somebody from North Korea. These companies create wealth. They create jobs. They build businesses, right? The government doesn't do any of that. The government will now have to reap the whirlwind of getting these people laid off just so that they can prove a point to their mates at Labour Party conferences. Go, oh, look what we did. We went after the billionaires. Oh, but it didn't work because they're still millionaires. So what's the point?
So you're literally saying if somebody says to companies that are making billions of pounds, have been making billions of pounds, hundreds of millions of pounds, whilst everyone else in the country has been struggling to make ends meet. You say if somebody turns around to them and
everybody
says,
else hasn't been struggling to make ends meet. The train drivers haven't been struggling. The doctors haven't been struggling, have they?
Everybody else. You turn around and you say, look, everybody else has been struggling just for a little bit. Just have slightly lower profits. Have slightly lower profits. Have slightly lower.
It's not government's business to do that.
Get the country.
No.
What do you mean?
It's not the government's business to do that. We don't live in a socialist society, right? They're supposed to be sensible people, but they're not. They're children of some kind of socialist ridiculousness from sixth form where they think, right, oh, look, somebody with money, let's go after them. It didn't stop old Keir Starmer taking 100,000 quid from Lord Ali. You know, he's a hypocrite. It didn't stop Rachel Reeves from taking loads of freebies. It didn't stop any of them from doing that. They don't object to rich people as long as the rich people believe in what they believe in.
When I've been on this programme, Mike, we've talked about that, and I've condemned them for that.
Yeah, but don't tell me, don't tell me that the evil billionaires...
Well, I don't understand why you're sitting there on the home of common sense, telling everybody that everybody else in the country has to.
That's not what I'm telling you. You've not been listening, have you?
Cut their cloth.
You've not been listening.
Has to suffer.
Nobody has to suffer.
Of the living crisis. But the people who, some of the richest people, the richest executives, and the shareholders of these companies, they don't. They can just carry on making profits.
No,
because
my point to you is not that.
If we don't let them make profits like that, we're going to be North Korea.
Yeah, but hang on, because you've spectacularly, deliberately missed my point, which is that what they're doing is creating something which is unnecessary, which will create no extra money for them because of all the knock-on effects of what they're actually doing. That's my point to you. And I know that in your heart of hearts and in your mind, you know I'm right, but you just can't say it.
Mike, how can it be? On the one hand, everybody's running around saying it's absolutely horrendous. The government is raising £40 billion in extra tax. It's going to cripple the economy. And now you're saying they're not going to raise any money at all.
Well, they're not.
They are,
because the knock-on effects...
Now you make another very good point. How that money is spent, is it actually going to go into improving the health service? Is it going to go into improving schools? Is it going to improving roads? Is it going to give more police? Mike, we don't know. We don't know.
No, I can tell you for sure right now, right here. I can tell you for sure.
You're buying into this narrative. Oh my God, it's the worst government we've ever seen. Blah 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 blah. And I'm just sitting here saying, let's just wait and see.
Yeah, you keep saying wait and see, and it keeps getting worse, Dan. Let me ask you one final question. Let me ask you one final question because we've got to run. I'm getting told off from my producer, but so it's been very enjoyable. When's Rachel Reeves going to resign?
She's not.
She's not.
She's not.